back to Chicago Crossing Model Railroad Urban Renewal Edition. Yeah, as you can see, the layout is completely cleared off over here. I've taken everything that is not glued down, which is basically all the buildings. Those are gone now, so it looks like some parts of Chicago these days that deindustrialized. Don't worry, it'll all go back on, but first a few things that need to be done. So, you know, as they usually say, 2025 or any new year, it's new year, new you. So that's basically what we're going to do on Chicago Crossing. Kind of a few key things here that we need to actually do on the layout. And I've talked a little bit about them in a couple of previous editions. So number one, and this is something I've been putting off for a while, is to go back underneath the layout. I'm actually just going to shift the whole thing off of its table here. And I'm basically just going to set the thing down and I'm going to essentially redo a bunch of wiring. You know, last July when I was doing the CCMR at night project, I got all the wiring in, but you know, at some point when you're spending a month basically working with a layout popped up like a car hood, I think you just sort of start to put it together because you want to see the end of the project. And it's not to say I was rushing at it, but it's more simply to say creative burnout can happen in all sorts of ways, and frankly that even includes wiring. You know, it may not be the most interesting thing to do. I actually kind of enjoy it. But at the same time, it's probably something that I need to come back to and readdress and reorganize. You know, there's a little bit more that has to be done with getting this layout ready to have animated lighting. So the Arduino is on the way. That'll provide a lot of fun, not only for Finkel Steel, but maybe for the scrapyard. There is an arc welder there, so maybe it's time to actually make that work. And then the second part is to re-examine a lot of the scenery on here. You know, I've talked about this before, and you know, in Train Talk number 2, I went over the things that are kind of aprototypical about Chicago Crossing Model Railroad, and one of those things is the tunnels. When this layout was originally conceived, my goal was to make it more like Western Illinois. And you can find, you know, terrain sort of like this. You know, these tunnels were never meant to be mountains, but rather to simply be the sort of terrain you might find in Western Illinois or Eastern Iowa. With that in mind, you know, a lot of that stuff needs to just be taken down. And what I'm going to do is rip the tunnels off of the layout. Probably going to be a crowbar. That's all, you know, old school chicken wire and mesh that's basically kind of nailed into the layout. So, you know, pardon my dust. That's going to be sort of an interesting one. What's going to happen though is I'm going to be replacing the tunnel up front with something more akin to an overpass of another railroad. Now, above grade railroading in Chicago is actually extremely common. The Chicago Northwestern, or what is now the Union Pacific, has a bunch of that. And these were all grade separated back in the 20s or so. They have that kind of prototypical Art Deco look. The Burlington Northern Santa Fe, likewise, has a number of different areas where it's grade separated too. So that's a fairly prototypical type of modeling that I can do here. But it does mean getting rid of that tunnel and setting up something that looks vastly different. I do want overhead cover there. I'd considered maybe just expanding out some buildings or something like that. But again, there's an object permanence thing. When a train enters a closed space and comes out the other side, it sort of creates a discontinuity where you know, just sort of fool your own eye into thinking that the train is elsewhere now. And even if you see one half of it out of one part of the tunnel and the other half in the other. So the tunnels will go. We'll have an above grade separation with some track on it. In the back over by the south side, that's going to turn into a freeway overpass. And I think that'll provide some really nice options for additional lighting, additional signage. It'll basically be the, you know, freeway running from Gary and up through the Skyway. So that's like 90-94. And that'll look really cool too. So it also just creates something a little bit different. So phase 2, big scenery changes. In addition to that, where there are bluffs, that's going to become either retaining walls or gently sloping hills to better match some of the terrain in the Chicago area. Really, there are no bluffs that I've found in the Chicago area that kind of look that way. So we'll make those into retaining walls. There's plenty of evidence for those in the Chicago area. Now, the third option here, and this is something that I'm still exploring, is fixing some problems in the trackage. You know, when this was built, again, you can go back to video 2 and I talk all about this. I really had no idea how to operate a railroad. And so I didn't really put in the sort of crossovers that I want. I may decide to start hacking out pieces of track and adding in turnouts. We'll see how that goes. That'll be a possibility. And then last up is probably taking this yard track over here on the left side, or the right side of the layout rather, and maybe extending that out to permit runaround operations and to also just, you know, give a little bit more space for staging trains and things like that. The last thing here is basically to start putting in signals. You know, I've got a couple little dwarf signals up in the front over by the bridge, but frankly, there's a branch line, there's another branch that leads to that yard, all sorts of things that probably require mainline signal protection. And so incorporating that into the layout will be really nice. In the meantime, there's a ton of different small projects to actually get to. And this includes, you know, what I'm doing here, going through all of my other buildings and reworking all of the LED lighting in there, adding new stuff in, updating it, and getting it to where I can put in, you know, rooms and interiors and things like that. So if I'm getting bored or maybe a bit overwhelmed with dusty work, pulling tunnels apart and using a crowbar on, you know, 9 years worth of work, then I suppose the other thing I can do is go build a building or fix one up, you know, whatever it takes. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. That's kind of the teaser for what 2025 will bring. It's going to take probably all year, knowing my schedule. So stick with it. You won't see much operation. The buildings aren't probably going to go back on until next holiday season if everything is done. But hey, in the meantime, there's going to be all sorts of cool stuff happening on the layout. So 2025 is going to be an interesting year for Chicago Crossing. Stick around. It'll be fun.